The Buffalo Bills fell to the Denver Broncos on Monday night for a slew of reasons, not the least of which was not being able to count to 11. And then on Monday, they fired offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey as they fall to 5-5 in now the middle of the pack in a playoff race in the AFC. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills and Locked On NFL Scouting joins me now. And Joe, let's start with the play on the field before we get to Ken Dorsey. What is missing this year from a Bills team that we have seen over the last 3 or 4 years be one of the most consistently good teams in the league?
Well, I think the execution errors and sloppy mistakes of the football team just don't go away. They've been happening all season long. I think you saw it in week 1, Monday Night Football against the Jets. And while there are times where it will disappear, for the most part, the Bills have been a sloppy, undisciplined football team this season. And that's why they're 5-5. That's why they're not meeting expectations yet, and why you saw a pretty big decision made here in the middle of the season to move on from Ken Dorsey. You kind of wonder if the Bills have expired, if they plateaued, right? This nucleus, this core, as they're constructed, have they achieved all that they're going to achieve? And is it time to start asking some even bigger questions?
Certainly, those questions are starting to be asked, at least internally, it seems, if they're going to make a move like this. Sean McDermott potentially feeling the heat. But offensively, if you look at a lot of the underlying numbers, this has still been a very good offense this season, even with Josh Allen throwing the ball up for grabs 2 or 3 times a game. And so personally, I have a hard time hanging a lot of this on Ken Dorsey. How much of this, in terms of the criticism and ultimately this action, do you think is earned?
Well, he deserves a slice of the pie. That's what I'll say. It's certainly not the only issue at one Bills drive, and it never is. It's never just one thing, but it's the thing that they can do right now, right? Sean McDermott wasn't going to fire himself today, and that decision was potentially for a later time. But what you can do right now is make a switch at offensive coordinator, where you had a logical successor in the building in Joe Brady, who's been the quarterback's coach, obviously what he did at LSU and had his chance with the Carolina Panthers. So you get a 7-game audition for him, and I think what it comes down to is, for as statistically strong as the Bills are, right? That's what's going to be confusing about this entire conversation for a lot of people, is statistically the Bills are at the top or near the top in a lot of the very meaningful offensive categories. But at the same time, watching the team, you can just tell that they're not meeting their potential, and there's a lot of meat on the bone, and there's just a lot of miscues, whether it is turnovers, whether it's drop passes, missed assignments, processing errors, mental mistakes. And when you have so much of that happening, at some point you got to point your finger right back to the guy coordinating it all, right? It's easy to watch the tape and say, execution error, Ken Dorsey didn't throw that interception. He didn't fumble that football. He didn't miss that block. But when it's all the time and it's that frequent, you got to start asking yourself if the guy pulling the levers isn't responsible for the execution errors, while he's not necessarily the guy on the field making the mistakes. And so that's kind of how I rationalize it. And you expect a lot. You got Josh Allen, a superstar quarterback. You've got an offense that's mostly healthy, right? The Bills have had a lot of injuries. They're all on the defensive side of the football. They're just not getting enough production 6 weeks in a row, and it didn't feel like it was getting better. This is the move the Bills opted to make here to try to shake things up and do their best to go on a run here with 7 left to play.
I want you to straddle your NFL scouting host hat and Bills host hat for a second here, because I look at this team, and I tweeted this out, that it seemed like the last couple of years they took a little bit of the late career Aaron Rodgers route and said, we're going to invest resources in the defense, let Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs sort of lift everything up. They made the move in the first round with Dalton Kincaid here. But did they not do enough to supplement this offense with high-end investment at the skill positions, offensive line, those kinds of things, to try and create a little bit more continuity here?
I'd agree more with that in previous years. I think like this version of the Bills had the ingredients necessary to be a top offense. And they've been a top offense, right? Like statistically, they've been really good in scoring and yards every single year. I thought this was the most complete supporting cast that Josh Allen's had around him in his career. And I think you can maybe poke some holes in Gabe Davis as the number 2 receiver. I think there's a lot missing with his skill set. But I think the O-line, the run game, Dalton Kincaid to go with Stephon Diggs, some depth at receiver, I was pretty satisfied with it. But obviously it hasn't come together, and here we are. Bills have made a change in offensive coordinator.
What needs to happen the rest of the way for this team to look more like the team you thought it would be coming into the season?
play cleaner football. That's the thing, is they don't do the little smart things to help themselves win football games. And obviously, I think there's no greater example than what we watched on Monday Night Football, with 4 turnovers, with 4 huge drops. And then you had the game won. You overcame a lot of mistakes. You had the game won. But as you said in the open there, you can't count to 11 and you give them another shot at the field goal and you lose a football game. And so I think that was emblematic in so many ways of the mistakes that this team continues to make on a weekly basis. And you look at the operation and you've seen the adversity that they've went through throughout the years, right? Kind of right, being right there in the mix as a contender, having the ability to go and, win a Super Bowl. And you've told yourself that all the things that they've been through in the past were great learning opportunities that could be applied that will help them moving forward. Well, here's the forward part, and you're still making a lot of the same mistakes. And you just wonder, have the Buffalo Bills in their current form expired? I'm certainly asking myself that question right now.